So the three types of project risk that are normally considered. The first one is standalone risk, and like we mentioned before, this was talking about like standard deviation, and it's the project's total risk if it were operated independently, since we're talking about a project. Standalone risk ignores both the firm's diversification among projects and investors' diversification among firms. Standalone risk is measured either by the project's standard deviation or its coefficient of variation. Then we have corporate risk. And corporate risk is the total riskiness of the project, giving consideration to the firm's other projects, that is, to the diversification within the firm. It is the contribution of the project to the firm's total risk, and it is a function of two things. First, the project's standard deviation of net present value, and second, the correlation of the project's returns with those of the rest of the firm. Within firm risk is often called corporate risk and is measured by the beta of the project's return on assets versus the firm's return on assets. And then we have market risk. Market risk is the riskiness of the project to a well-diversified investor. Theoretically, it is measured by the project's beta, and it considers both corporate risk and stockholder diversification. And so here was just a summary slide for what I was talking about for standalone risk. Summary slide for corporate risk. And then a summary slide for market risk. So which of those three types of risk is the most relevant or important? Well, because management's primary goal is shareholder wealth maximization, the most relevant risk for capital projects is market risk. However, the creditors, customers, suppliers, and employees are all affected by a firm's total risk. Since these parties influence the firm's profitability, a project's within firm risk should not be completely ignored. So which one is the easiest to measure? Well, the easiest one to measure is a project's standalone risk. So firms often focus a lot on this type of risk when making capital budgeting decisions. This focus is not theoretically correct, but it does not necessarily lead to poor decisions, because most projects that a firm undertakes are in its core business. Sorry about that. So the next slide. Are the three types of risk generally highly correlated? Well, because most projects that a firm undertakes are in its core business, a project's standalone risk is likely to be highly correlated with its corporate risk, which in turn is likely to be highly correlated with its market risk.